Mate, thank you for having me.
Well, first up, you're not in Australia, you're over in New York. Tell us about why you're over there.
I'm in New York, yeah. So I'm glad we could coordinate a time that worked. If you hear a few sirens going off in the background, just warning you that I'm in the sort of apartment I'm in. It's in a pretty central area, so that may happen. But I have a green card now. I won the US green card lottery of all things, and was actually back in Australia for the pandemic for 11 months, and I had sort of a 12-month window to get myself back over here. So I've come over to set it up and bringing a lot of the work that I do over to the US.
Oh, congratulations. I absolutely love New York City. And I might just ask about the COVID experience, obviously, because how is it there, obviously, compared to how some of your other family members over here in Australia are dealing with it? What's America like at the moment?
Yeah, it's been interesting. So I got here at the end of February, and I was like really scared actually coming over, seeing that I'd been in Australia where it's so well contained, and probably, well, I guess realistically the best place on the planet to be. So I came over here, and it was sort of gradually opening up at that time. Obviously, COVID is everywhere, so I've been really careful when I came. Everything's pretty much open now. They've really rushed the vaccines out. I'm fully vaccinated myself. I got the Moderna vaccine, so that helps a lot as well. So I think it hasn't really, you forget that it's COVID apart from wearing a mask when you're sort of walking, in a crowded area. But I'm personally still, just trying to be wary of it and do my best to, not be in crowded situations too much.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it. We actually share the same birth date. I'm but 6 years apart. You were born in 1987, and I believe your father, Steve Bracks, entered politics as a member for Williamstown in 1994. So you would have been around 7 years old. So from a young age, you would have experienced a different, I suppose, normal to most family households. Your father then went on to become the longest serving premier in Victoria. As opposed to just being a son of a celebrity, you were the son of a successful leader. Did that put a lot of expectation on you as a child to succeed?
Uh, it did, but not from anything else other than myself. Because by virtue of probably two things, I'm an ambitious person. Whether my dad was, well known or successful or not, I think I would have always been ambitious. It's in my blood.
Yeah.
But on top of that, the situation definitely in my mind made me want to, do things on a high level. And I got to say, and I always say it, I've got the best parents on the planet. They just want us to be happy. We're so lucky, and they support us through everything. But I personally, it probably did, it made me think, well, hang on. And I think it puts the psychology in your mind thinking, well, my dad's done this. He's achieved, something really massive, and he's done it so well. It gives you a belief that you can as well, but it also puts that pressure on if you've got the mindset of, I guess, like what I have. So, positives and negatives of that, but all in all, I wouldn't change anything, and it's driven me to, go down the path that I've gone down.
So there wasn't really any unfair pressure for you to follow either into politics or to do something really big with your life. The pressure just came from yourself, did it?
Yeah, definitely. No pressure at all to go into politics. I mean, our parents, like any parents, just wanted us to be happy and wanted us to have stable careers and go down pathways that are going to be conducive to giving us a good life. And I've probably chosen, that's probably been something that they haven't always, understood. I've chosen a very tumultuous career path where I've never actually had a normal job, and I've started my own businesses, and I've been in the entertainment world and acting and you public speaking and all that sort of thing. So it's definitely different. It's made it harder, but it's also been really rewarding. But yeah, again, it really is. If I boil it down, and to this day, I've worked on myself a lot, but I still do put pressure on myself. I want so much out of life, and I have to every single day reel myself back in and remind myself that I can only do so much on this day, because you can get caught up in trying to think too far ahead and put unnecessary pressure on yourself.
Well, that pressure that you talk about, you describe as an unhealthy obsession when you were younger with fitness to be an athlete. I think around 10 years of age that might have started, and that was even behind your parents' back. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, well, that was the first thing. The first thing I wanted to do was play AFL football as a very young kid, and I grew up supporting Geelong and still do. And my hero is Gary Ablett, and I wanted to be like him, and I would, do anything I could. My dream was to play AFL, and as a kid, I became so fit because I wanted to play it that I was, running and doing more training than anyone else, and I started winning all these middle distance running races and became obsessed with it. And I was training, as an 11-year-old kid for 6 hours a day, and I'd be getting up
Wow.
in the morning and hiding it from my parents. My mum was really worried and could see that it was a problem, so I'd be, trying to actually withhold, what I was doing from them. And it got results in the short term, but it led to a lot of problems, and it was compulsive behavior, really.
Well, after that, I mean, you obviously went to uni, dropped out of uni, and started drinking. What was going on in your mind back then, and perhaps retrospectively, what was going on in your mind back then? Because as we know, sometimes what we thought we were thinking at the time can be different to how we analyze it later.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, at that time, I was completely lost. I didn't know who I was. I had built my entire psychology, everything my whole self worth on this need and want to be a professional athlete, and that's I'd worked towards, and I'd put copious amounts of effort and work into doing this thing, and that I got so badly injured that I had to stop, and I didn't want anything else, and I was lost, and I also hadn't developed social skills. I'd isolated myself, and there's a whole sort of backstory to that. But because of the excessive training and everything else, and being very shy and vulnerable at the time, uh, not having a lot of self confidence or self worth, I struggled, and I struggled after school, and dropped out of this course, and fell into a spiral, and discovered alcohol, and it went down this really negative path. Um, so looking back, I just feel for that kid, and I have empathy for him, and I understand why, and in short, it's why I still do the work that I do now, where the core of what I love to do is just go and talk to people, share my story, talk about vulnerability, try and teach people that it's okay to be open and honest, and talk about your feelings, especially men, because we feel like we should have all the answers and be able to deal with all these different things. But at the end of the day, if I look back to my, 18, 19, 20-year-old self, I look back to that kid, and just, my advice to him would be, it's okay. You don't have to have all the answers. You know what? It's okay if you fuck up. It's okay if you don't know what to do right now. That's fine. You're 20 years old, like you've got your whole life ahead,
Mm.
and just take it back a notch.
Well, a major part of your story, though, was an accident that occurred, I guess, quite publicly in 2007, I think, single vehicle accident in which your friend was injured and you sort of blew a very high alcohol reading and were charged. Can you tell me
Yeah.
more about that accident and perhaps what led to that point more significantly?
Well, that was all the same thing that I was talking about there. I was off the rails. I had dropped out of university. I was using alcohol to cope. I was getting in, dangerous situations on a regular basis. And at the end of the day, something's got to give. If you're putting yourself in that regularly enough, something's going to happen. And that did. Luckily, no one was badly injured. Could have been a huge amount, could have been significantly worse. Uh, by virtue of my dad being the premier at the time, that became a national news story, and it was a whole other thing to deal with. But
Mm.
again, my message around that is, yeah, I did the wrong thing. I owned up to it. I accepted all the consequences. I learned from it. I used it to go and try and help other people. And kids make mistakes, and again, we shouldn't ridicule people for making mistakes. We should punish them, and hopefully you learn from it. But I didn't know any better at the time. I didn't know how to cope. I was confused. I was lost. I was acting out because I was I was not in a good way, and I didn't have any idea. At that time, I didn't have the self awareness to know how to deal with it.
Yeah. There's no other way to do this. I'm going to segue into, I guess, some lighter stuff because I really want to come back and end this podcast with some more stuff about mental health. So I just want to go to other parts of your life for now. I think that, obviously anyone that knows you will know you for your modeling work. I mean, how did all of that come about?
I mean, basically, I had been in the media. I was at university, and I got approached to do some modeling work. And the very first thing that happened, I was literally at an event, and one of the representatives for American Crew hair product approached me and said, "Oh, look, would you want to do this photo shoot? Would love to have you as the face of this campaign we're doing." And that ended up being on this catalog in GQ magazine, and that got seen. And then I got approached by modeling agencies and started getting asked to do different things. And sort of the first thing I did was Maya Fashion Week and walked in this parade there, and they made a bigger media event about it. And it sort of went from there. So it wasn't something that I really planned. I guess it probably came about from being in the public eye and getting approached through that, and went from there.
Well, I guess it seems like a funny question to ask, but I mean, do you enjoy modeling? And I ask that because you seem like the opposite stereotype to a model. I mean, obviously in the looks department, I mean, everyone knows you drop dead gorgeous, but you seem so nice and humble and down to earth. You talked about being shy and vulnerable, opposite to the bitchy or cattiness that or being a show off that some people might associate with the model. But you also then seem so comfortable walking down a runway or being on television in a pair of undies. I mean, do you actually enjoy the modeling part, or is it a means to an end?
I mean, first of all, I'd say drop dead gorgeous is a massive overstatement, but I'll take it. Number two, look, I don't, modeling, I don't enjoy. I love acting. Like I got into, I'm really grateful that I fell into that work because and look, if I'm brutally honest, the reason I pursued that and then was on reality shows and did all that stuff at the time, I was 20, 21, 22 years old. I was young, and I was probably mentally younger than a lot of people that age. I didn't know who I was. I was vulnerable. I was insecure. Like I'd said earlier, I wanted to be a professional athlete, couldn't do that, felt like I had no self-worth. And I was, I mean, in Melbourne anyway, like becoming very known as a public entity. And I was getting people approaching me, especially when I'd been on these reality shows. And that was to me fueling this fire of thinking, okay, now that I'm doing this stuff, people know who I am, and that means I'm worth something. And I just wanted more of it. And, looking back, I don't blame myself for doing that. But at the same time, it's a horrible reason to try and do anything. And it's actually, again, why, I'm a big believer in life, that to be able to, talk with authority on anything or understand anything or help other people, you got to experience it yourself. And I've got empathy in so many areas because I've suffered from depression. I've been through hell and back. I've had these experiences where I was, that guy that was seeking validation by trying to become famous or wanting attention and all that kind of thing. And that was the appeal for me. Modeling to me isn't something I, enjoy pursuing. But it also opened a door that, the reason I got into acting in the first place was actually because again, if I'm honest, the short answer is I was getting all of that attention. I thought, how do I get more famous? I want to be an actor now. And I started pursuing it. And I think in the first or second acting class I went to, and I was terrified going to these classes, that very quickly I was like, holy shit, there's so much that goes into acting. And to be a good actor, you've got to, do this and understand yourself so well and understand other people. And this isn't something that you can just do overnight. And pretty much after like a month of doing that, I was loving it so much that, and it was helping with my public speaking that I was sort of getting into at the time, that I just didn't even care anymore. I was like, I don't even, I was like, I actually found something that I truly liked, and it helped me. And it was not even about getting work in that industry. It was just about personal growth. So all of that stuff led to something that, I now really value, and for, reasons that are not about wanting attention or validation from it. But, that was why I was doing it at the time. And I think that's pretty common with a lot of people not just in, modeling. I think it's a big problem. And this isn't me judging anyone. I'm putting my hand up saying I was the same, and
Yeah.
how it's very hard not to be. But a huge problem with the world now, and is that everyone's seeking validation from so many different angles. And social media, we all want to be seen and liked, and talk about how amazing we are, and this, that, and the other. At the expense of doing the fundamentals of looking after yourself, having good, genuine connections. Helping other people, doing all these different things that are going to make us much more fulfilled. We're looking for external validation rather than feeding ourselves internally. So I'm sorry I've gone on a tangent there, but that
No,
was
no.
sort of a very long-winded answer to your question.
Well, the other sort of loyal following, I mean, you've got a loyal gay following and have appeared in DNA. To me, that this seems to never have phased you. You embrace people from all walks of life. Has that been your experience since childhood, or has just the various opportunities and an experience led you to that point?
I think, again, a combination. My parents I've got a younger brother and sister who are both amazing people, and my parents have raised us very well and taught us good values, and to respect other people, and taught us that everyone's equal. And it's not something that I even think about. I find it offensive to even not I guess even offensive to label people or talk about it. Like, it shouldn't. Like, I'm so glad with how far all of this has come, because it shouldn't be something people even flinch at. But so it's how we've been raised, and then I think it's how I naturally am as well. Where like the work I do now, where it's all about empathy and vulnerability and understanding people. My probably number one thing is I'm fascinated by people, and I want to understand why this person in front of me. I want to know what they've been through. I want to know how they, what experiences have they had? How have they come to this position in life? And it really upsets me when people judge anyone, because none of us know what that person's been through. So that was when that sort of happened, I completely embraced it. And I thought, well, that's fantastic, and some of my best friends are gay. It just wasn't, even a question for me about, is this a good or a bad thing? It was like, great, thank you. I was like so grateful that I had this following and these people supporting me, and I wanted to give back to that community as well.
Well, you had another following when you were a finalist in Clio Bachelor of the Year. Is being in something involved in that like genuinely, I don't know, gratifying, or is it kind of embarrassing as well? Or
Well, look, all of that stuff was, around that same time period of when I was modeling and on reality shows, and, soul searching myself. And like I was saying before, looking for validation in the wrong areas. So, um, to answer your question, is it validating? Absolutely not. I mean, it's laughable that you're having a competition where you're trying to decide. I mean, how the hell do you decide who the Bachelor of the Year is? Or, the show The Bachelor? How do you decide who, like, these are ideas plucked out of thin air. It's all marketing campaigns. You can make anything sound like anything. It's ridiculous. It was fun, but again, if I'm honest, at that point in time, with where I was at emotionally, with where I was at with my own insecurities and needing external validation, I thought it was the most exciting thing in the world, and I wanted to win it. And so it's all perspective, and we're all on a different path, and I think a lot of things in the world don't have a huge amount of meaning behind them. But you know what, we can't judge things as well, I think, is what I've learned, because everyone's on a different path, and I think that's a big part of the sort of conversation around anything when it comes to mental health.
yeah, with the I guess Bachelor of the Year sort of stuff. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't remember many articles with you being linked to anyone in terms of relationships and stuff. If you Google Nick Bracks, you get a whole heap of stuff, but never so much about dating or paparazzi with dating. Not much. It hasn't been that. I mean, you've been dating over the years, or you've been mostly single, or just that you keep your private life private.
A bit of both. Been single, been dating. Mainly though, keep it private. It's not something that I feel like needs to be talked about, should be talked about. I mean, I'm not even that well known, but I can't imagine what it would be like for these legitimate major celebrities being hounded about their personal lives. I mean, it's like I'm willing to talk about if I'm involved in a project or I've got a book coming out soon, and I'll obviously be publicizing and talking about that because I believe in the end goal of what we're trying to do. And I talk all the time. I'm incredibly vocal about mental health, but I don't really believe or see any reason or rationale in talking about a relationship. I think that's something that is private, and it doesn't really make sense to me to publicize that.
All right. Well, I want to talk about Dancing with the Stars. I'm only going to ask you two questions about that. Obviously, you were on Dancing with the Stars. I just wanted you to tell me a bit about that experience because I understand you almost pulled out at the last minute.
I did. I was terrified. I was so shy and insecure, and just got. I'd coming out of this bout of depression, and I'd been through university and got over this fear of public speaking, where I was so terrified that I almost pulled out of the course at university, and I'd vomit talking in front of 4 or 5 people, and I had to read off a sheet of paper, and I'd be literally like looking at the floor and shaking and mumbling as I was like talking, and I did almost pull out of it, and it was only because I had to get some structure in my life and get on track that I didn't. So I'd come out of that, and then I got asked to go on this show, and I was like, how the hell am I going to go and dance on live TV with this live audience? I think they were averaging around 2 million viewers an episode, and I wouldn't even dance if I'm out with my friends, and I'd got over this fear of speaking. So I was on the phone to the producer about to pull out, and the only reason I didn't was because I thought to myself, well, number one, I was working with Beyond Blue at the time, and you get to work with a charity, and I wanted to, even at that point, I was like, I want to help in mental health, and this is a chance to do it. And I thought, well, even though I'm terrified, this is a chance to really break me open and get over a lot of my, fears and insecurities and shyness. And I stuck to it for that reason. And probably one of the worst dances in the history of that bloody show, but I stayed in there for like 7 out of the 10 weeks somehow. A lot of people must have voted for me, and and it became a really important experience for me.
Well, I want to come back to this idea about how you feel about modeling because with Dancing with the Stars, I was watching again your dances on the show, and I'm sure you'll remember the rumba you did with Jess with the Robbie Williams song and the shirt came off and so on. There was all this screaming, and much of the judges' talk was actually about your body as opposed to your dance. You made one throwaway comment that taking your shirt off was awkward. You must have been at the time, I can imagine, so focused on the dance moves and putting on this big performance, but then the reaction and talk is about your body. You seem to want to refocus on the dance. Is being, inverted commas, hot, for a better term, a double-edged sword?
Yeah, I mean, I think in that it was like, yeah, exactly. It was just sort of the story behind the shirt thing was there was the 2 young guys on that show were me and Dan Ewing, who is an actor of Home and Away, and we became good mates, and we'd sort of joke and take the piss out of each other. And there was all talk in the show of who's going to be the first. Someone on every season takes your top off, and so we were joking around. Everyone was joking about it. And it was like I think it was episode 3 or 4, and we thought, let's just do it because Dan's going to do it soon. Let's beat him to it, and wanted to sort of get a one up on him. So we did it in that and beat him to it, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I think, again, it comes back to, I guess like a little bit of a negative if you want to look at it that way in terms of people thinking, oh, you're a model and, you're just, parading it around and that's what your value is. But I don't really care because that stuff gave me a platform to talk about mental health. So without all of that, I wouldn't have probably gone down this, had the opening to talk about this stuff, and people can think what they want. Hopefully I've done enough in that area over the last 10 years since all that stuff that they've changed their perspective. And from what I see, they have. And I think that's, that's all that really matters, just what we actually do rather than what people think or what we say. And that's how I try and view everything, because like, we can't control, a lot in life, but we control what we do and, what foot forward we put. And I think if you live by that every day, you make life easier for yourself.
You were talking about a passion for acting before, and of course, you did get a role in Neighbours. How did that come about?
So I actually was very fortunate early on in my acting career. I um, was curious, trying a few different classes here and there. I was very green, had no idea, anything about it. And quite early on, got introduced to Craig McMahon, who's still my manager in Australia now, and he runs a film school in Melbourne. And he took me on and very kindly put me through his film school. And I did a full time course and learned a huge amount, and then kept in classes. And around that time, I started auditioning, and I think I auditioned for Neighbours maybe 5 or 6 times, and um, they had sort of said to me by the end, "Look, we like you, we want you for something, but we haven't found the right role." And when I landed that I actually got a call from my manager from Craig saying that 6 months later they want you for this role, and they had had me on record, so I didn't even audition for that particular one, and got the role. And it was meant to be, I think, 1 or 2 episodes, and they extended it and turned into an ongoing guest role. And yeah, was a great. That's how that came about, and was a really good experience for me and early on in my acting career.
There's been a lot written about the culture of Neighbours and racism on the show, mental health with some of the stars from different cultures. In retrospect, was there anything concerning that you saw, or not really?
There wasn't. I only heard about that briefly, and I don't know anything about it. So obviously, it's a terrible thing if that happened, or apparently what happened, which I think is horrible. From what I saw, it was a really positive experience. One of my close friends, actually, I'll give him a shout out, Tim Kano. Hopefully, he listens to this. Where he's one of my best friends now, and I met him on it, and we really bonded. And that's probably one of the great things I take out of it, a friendship that I made. And the cast were really accommodating. All the crew were really great, made me feel comfortable. I was nervous probably on the first drive in there, and by that afternoon I was completely comfortable, and the rest was all smooth sailing. So it felt to me like a really tight knit group. But again, like anything to do with racism or anything like that in any workplace is a shocking thing, and definitely that if that happens, it needs to be dealt with.
Yeah. Well, let's get into, I suppose, it's considered the more heavy stuff. In one of your videos, you talk about someone in Australia committing suicide every 40 seconds. I mean, that's extraordinary. Obviously, that would not include, attempted suicides. I mean, I fall into that category, an attempted suicide after the death of my sister. You dealt with all sorts of issues growing up, compulsive OCD type issues, pressure. What would you say to someone that says to you, what are you on about, Nick? You've got loving, supporting parents. You're drop dead gorgeous. You have opportunities thrown at you. Why would you feel like that? Or why would you feel all of this pressure when you've got everything going for you?
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. It's a shocking statistic. One person around the world every 40 seconds commits suicide. But the point, and this has come up in a lot of the talks I've done, where I've been in a factory, and people were laughing at me at the beginning because these guys have dealt with some really heavy things, and I emphasize with them about it. And they're like, this young guy, and they've got a perception of me. Why, who the hell's this young guy to come and tell us who have been through all these horrific things about mental health? And I get it, but at the same time, my answer to that is, well, I'm trying to show an example. I'm not unique. My story is not unique. I'm just one person out of millions of people that have had mental health issues, and I'm trying to use that story and the resources I have behind me in this organization, the Move Your Mind, programs that we run, to educate people. And this doesn't discriminate. It's not about anything external. I mean, it can be brought on by that, of course, but there's so many elements, and it's so complicated, and it's something that can affect anyone. And I think that's where we need to get at, not labeling or judging or looking at who's better or worse, or in the middle. It's about, if someone's suffering, then they should be comfortable to talk about it. They should be made to feel comfortable, and they should be, even if they don't have in their immediate family or friends that support system, they should be able to access it through various different means. And I'm talking about it for that reason as well, to show that, well, yeah, great, I'm on paper might have things going for me that people think should not lead to having that. That's nothing to do with it. We're all human. We feel things, and I'm sure there's a lot of people. There's a lot of very wealthy people, a lot of celebrities, as we all know, that suffer from mental health issues, and it doesn't discriminate.
Mm. Well, I guess we talked about you talked about it. It doesn't discriminate socioeconomic backgrounds, gender, race, sexual orientation, sexuality. Although we do know though that there can be higher rates though in certain demographics, right?
Definitely, there can be higher rates in certain demographics, and it can be exacerbated by certain areas, of course. And I think an important thing to remember is when it comes to the topic of mental health, it's incredibly complicated. And, what works for one person might not work for another. And we need to, again, the big thing I talk about is we need to talk about this, and
Mm.
we need to be educated about it, because we just need to understand what's out there and what's available to us. For one person, it might be that a psychologist is going to be, doing regular work with a psychologist is going to be the resource that they need. For someone else, it might not work. They might need help from a friend to just talk to or vent to. They might need a combination of a lot of things, an exercise program, meditation, seeing a psychologist every 2 weeks, being on antidepressants, can help a lot of people. So the landscape for, how to explore this is really vast, and there's so many different things to delve into. So my big thing on that is we just need to be educated so we can actually understand on a societal level some of the points you're bringing up.
Well, you've done a lot and are still doing a lot in the mental health space. For the audience, it's really simple for the website. You can go to nickbracks.com. Look, there's a lot of content in there, but tell me more about the Move Your Mind podcast.
Yeah, so Move Your Mind is a mental health based podcast where we're interviewing a range of profiled people and experts. And really the goal of that is we're just having these open and honest conversations. And with these people that are, that are known and that have a public profile, it's less about their career, more about who are you as a human? What have you been through? What did you have to go through to develop the mindset you had? Trying to, extract that to help the listener, and then learning from different experts. So we started that about a year ago, had a lot of traction through it, which has been great. I've rebranded everything I do now into Move Your Mind, and we have video programs and audio programs. I do public speaking, where I've got a book coming out called Move Your Mind, being published by Wiley, and that gets released in August this year in Australia. And that's, again, sort of combining a lot of the stuff I do, and it's got a common thread of my own insights and story and interviews from experts and celebrities, and it's a really, I guess, in short, a mental health Bible that people can hopefully pick up and use as a toolkit to learn and to actually guide them in, what can I do? How can I help myself?
I like the title Move Your Mind because to me, it seems 9 times out of 10, it's a simple wiring in our brains that stops us from being who we want to be. In your case, you had a supportive family, a successful modeling career. I'm sure finances were okay, but you were grappling with fear and pressure took over your life. So I guess if you can move your mind, you can overcome anything, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you can move your mind, change your perception, even on a simple term like movement, actual physical movement helps so much with our mindset. So I think there's a lot of, things to be taken out of the name Move Your Mind, and that's why we came up with it in the beginning. And I think that's what hopefully we're educating people about. Just move your mind, change that perception, even if it's changing it by 5%. Just try and see things from a different perspective and open yourself up to other ways of looking at things.
Well, there's so much you're doing right now, and you're even offering training for employers. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so we offer, like, I do public speaking. I've been doing that for 10 years. We've got programs where they're go and audio based learning programs. They come with the main course is a 10-part mental health masterclass course. It's almost like a mental health 101 learning kit. We've got psychologists, we've got different experts for areas around nutrition, sleep, meditation, anxiety, different models, habit formation models. And it comes with workbooks and printable toolkits as well. So we license that into companies, and it's designed to be an ongoing toolkit to help learn. And you can also purchase that if you're an individual. Anyone listening, if you go onto my website, you can actually find it on there and purchase it for your own use.
I want to go through a few scenarios, perhaps, and you can throw in some advice there. Now, you've in a previous question I asked you, I think you generally answered this question, but if you want to add sort of anything more to it. So the first scenario, you have a brilliant young man with a beautiful and successful and supportive family. His father is successful and well known in the community and across the media. And although this young man loves his father, he wants to step outside the shadow of him and goes about it in almost an obsessive way. He drops out of university, is involved in a car crash, and becomes high profile. That becomes high profile, and he's grappled with fear and pressure. At the height of all of that, and the car crash and everything that's going on with this young man, what advice would you give to him?
It would be pretty simple. I'd say to him, you know what, you are enough. You don't have to prove anything. You're already fundamentally enough as a person, and it's going to be okay. You don't have to have all the answers. Life's going to be confusing, and that's probably never going to change. No one ever has all the answers to anything. So I'll just be really saying that you're enough as you are right now, and it's okay. Just it's okay to be confused.
Yeah.
Sorry, mate. Is it okay if I take? Sorry, I don't know if you can edit this after. I just have someone that's continually buzzing the door. Is that okay if I quickly take a pause?
No, of course.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'll be like literally probably 3 minutes.
Yeah, no problem. All good.
Minutes. All right, no problem. Cheers, mate. Thank you. Sorry about that, mate.
That's okay.
All good.
These things happen. All right, I'll just pick up where. Okay. Yes, and for those of you playing at home, that of course was the story of Nick Bracks. Here's another scenario. So you have a young man with a horrific childhood, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, manipulation, negligence, who, like the previous example, wants to escape the shadow and be himself. His support and only real support is his sister, who he cherishes, but ultimately dies when she's 15. The young man attempts suicide, gets through that, but lives in fear of trust to the point where he's not been in a relationship for 20 years. He spends most of his life in an advocating role and community service role. He also works in sections of the media and ends up interviewing a guy called Nick Bracks about mental health after and after the death of his sister and haunted by trust issues, and he's, with all his past, he obviously wants to move forward. How can he successfully move forward?
Well, first of all, yeah, I'd say, and I think I know who we're, talking about here, but I would say, he's got to give himself credit for what he's been through, and how much resilience. I think more resilience than almost anyone on the planet to go through all of that and come out level-headed. And I think that is a more worthy achievement than anything, any amount of fame or money or other things that society often praises people for. Uh, you know, it, so I think giving yourself credit for that is the first thing, and then it's about reminding yourself that we're all on a different path. We can only deal with what's in front of us, taking things one step at a time, and trying to learn from the experience, trying to work on yourself, trying to have a good support team around you, having family, friends, having therapists. But whatever that support team looks like, having that and checking in and doing things daily that are going to keep you on track. I know for me, it's like exercising every morning. I meditate. I write in a gratitude journal. I do my acting. I do breathing exercises. I'm very lucky that I've got a close knit family, and I've got three
Yeah.
people that I can talk to 24/7 every single day. So things like that, having that in place, and then really looking at how can I use that experience to help others. So I think there's nothing more meaningful than that. So I think it's often comes down to just reminding yourself that giving yourself credit for what you've been through and overcome, and the path that you're on.
I will sort of preface, with a footnote with that, and just say, like Nick, I've actually done a lot of public speaking about my story and stuff. So in case anyone sends me emails saying, "Am I okay?" This is stuff that's happened in my life over 20 years, and I own my past. And I've actually spoken about my story in high schools and detention centers and things like that. So, yeah, just in case anyone's going to send an email, if I'm okay, yes, this is something I've dealt with, like Nick with his past, and it's all good. The last scenario, and this is actually a friend of mine, a young man, drugs, burglary, has a 15-year-old girlfriend, ends up in jail for 2 to 3 years, comes out, absolutely transforms his life. Gorgeous person on the inside and out, successful in the areas of fitness and within his profession, has the potential absolutely to make it big, but is held back because when people find out about his criminal history involving a 15-year-old, because ultimately that's still an underage offense, even though it was, they were very close in age and it was 15. But his determination and will is high. He is one of the most positive people you'll ever meet, but fears the past catching up with him and blocking opportunities. What would you say to this young man?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, but what I would say is, everyone deserves a second chance, and if someone's owning up to their mistakes, I think it's different if someone's denying or not taking responsibility for it. But if they are and they're trying to better themselves, then I think we need to be able to I think a big thing that I believe is the reason people are so judgmental about people in general is because we're not taught in society to understand a lot of the stuff we're talking about today in terms of emotional awareness and relationships and people and what makes us tick, and how can we look after our mental wellness. So when someone acts out or does anything on a low level or high level, often we are very quick to label people. It's very black and white. That's good or that's bad. They're in one of two categories. If they're in the bad category, we write them off. And I think it's much more complicated. It's the gray areas of, hang on, what's driven someone to behave like that? Maybe they had a traumatic experience, or maybe this happened. It doesn't excuse any behavior. People should be punished if they break the law or do something that is wrong. But I think we need to have empathy and try and understand, why did people behave that way? And I think that's a real problem that in society, we more so just like to judge people than try and explore that side of it.
Yeah, and thank you for going through those few scenarios. That's awesome. There've been more and more claims about poor mental health from reality show contestants. Especially in the news lately, they sign up to these shows with no real training or mental health advice on the effects of, I guess, instant fame can have. They might get the villain edit on the show and are subject to online trolling, death threats, bad press coverage. Is there any advice that you can give to these sort of wannabe reality contestants?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say definitely they should be going in with their eyes open. They should be. My advice would be that, if you're doing it because, which, sadly, I think the reason that most people do it, I could be wrong. I can't talk for everyone, but I think, and having been on them myself, I think people do it because they're seeking validation. They want to be famous. They think it's going to give them a career or, a TV career or whatever it is. And the reality is, maybe there are, I've been on Neighbours, and there's a few actors like Margot Robbie that have become movie stars after being on Neighbours, but they're not a movie star because they were on Neighbours. It doesn't mean I'm going to become a movie star. And the same as being on a reality show. Because you're on a reality show doesn't mean you're going to become this big star. So go and realize what you're signing up for, that it's fleeting, it's a bit of fun. You're probably going to be have people taking the piss out of you and using you to get a reaction, because that's the whole point of a reality show. It's about trying to prey on people and create drama. So I think if people can acknowledge that and understand what it is, then they're probably not going to be as affected. I think the problem is most people just are desperate to be famous and go and do it, and after the matter they realize that, oh God, I didn't know it would be this hard, or I didn't know this is how they're created, or it's this fake, or this or that or the other, and then they get affected by it. So I think people, it's probably more from the production side who are to blame, because at the end of the day it's preying on vulnerable people.
Mm. Well, I want to get back to this guy, Nick Bracks. I'm interested to know what a typical week looks like for you. It seems that you sort of do a lot of different things. I'm wondering, what does a typical week look for you? Or is there a typical week?
Yeah, it's like changing a lot of the time. Never quite typical, but in general, it is a lot of things, but it's all under the banner of Move Your Mind. That's my company that I'm building. So that whether it's public speaking, creating our programs, the podcast, the book, we're building this Move Your Mind mental health platform into a media company. And the core of everything we're doing is creating media content that we can educate people on a mainstream level about mental health. And that goes into, in the future, even making short films and feature films in that realm, where we can have the underlying message of mental health, but use it as an educational tool. So that's really what Move Your Mind does. And then the other thing I do outside of that is acting. So on any given day, doing my own, practice. I learned PEM, which is an acting technique that I practice all the time, which I love. I'm practicing that. I'm, reading through scripts, auditioning for roles, sometimes a lot of the time, sometimes not a lot of the time. It's very sporadic, obviously, but, those are the two different things. And, currently living in New York and bringing a lot of the work that I do over here, which has been, so far really great. We've been very fortunate to already have the support from Thrive, which is Ariana Huffington's company. And, they're getting behind a lot of the work we're doing and helping push it out into the American market. And, it's a slow process, but it's definitely, we're seeing results already of, getting it out there.
Well, let's say in a few years' time, everything you wanted to do in the mental health space was successful. What would that look like for you?
What I would love would be to, build this into a mainstream platform. And, at the core, what we want to do is make, our whole mission statement is we want to entertain the masses about mental health. So what we mean by that is getting, well-known figures, turning this podcast into a big mental health-based talk show, getting them on there, interviewing them and having real conversations, using that content to get people from all over the world listening to it, and then having them delve into the other resources and learnings that we provide, and understanding and educating them about everything else that is out there and what they can do. So really building it into, a mainstream media platform embedded in mental health. And then outside of that, obviously I want to keep growing and learning as an actor, and whether that takes off or not in a big way, it's unknown. Something I'll do for the rest of my life. Well, at the moment, that's my view. That can change as well, but that's the other part, just growing as an actor and learning. Which I think it goes hand in hand with growing as a human. I think the more evolved you become as a human, the more it helps your acting, and the other way around.
Well, the other thing is, you obviously got your website, nickbracks.com. If someone was to go on to nickbracks.com, what would they see or participate in or be able to get more information about?
Yeah, so if you go on there, there'll be a pop-up coming up with all the links to the podcast. So, that would be a first point of call. That's a free podcast. It's available on, it has all the links, Spotify, Acast, and Apple Podcasts. You'll then see links to our programs, one of them Mental Health Masterclass. That's the video program that you can actually purchase. We've also got free content and free sort of tip sheets that you can download through the website. And then soon, we don't have it on there right now, but this will be going up soon. The Move Your Mind book is already available for pre-order. If you go on Amazon and type in Move Your Mind by Nick Bracks, that'll come up. But we'll soon have the actual link to the book on there, and you'll be able to have a look at the book and pre-order it, and buy it through there if you're interested in it.
Well, just one more thing about the book, Move Your Mind book. You did speak about it a bit earlier about what's in it. My understanding is it's really a very practical type book for all Australians. It's not like a psychology book that you got to kind of got to get your head around. My understanding, it's more about for the everyday person, about practical tips for their life, isn't it? Is that right?
Absolutely, yeah. And look, that goes hand in hand with what we already do with everything with the Move Your Mind business. It's all about, I'm not a psychologist. We work with psychologists, but what the realm we're playing in is we want to be able to give preventative, simple information to, everyone around the world. And this book is designed in that way that, it's not your solution to mental health. It's actually something that you can use to just try and maybe by even only 5%, improve your daily behaviors and learn about how can I understand myself more? How can I maybe look at learning how to talk about my own story? Where can I go? What can I do if I'm suffering? Okay, here's how I can find a psychologist. Here's how I can do that. But here's some really practical things I can do for myself. And it's broken up into, in the middle of the book, it's 4 key areas around Move Your Mind, which is all to do with movement, for improving your mindset. Feed Your Mind, which is about what content we consume and obviously what we eat. Connect Your Mind, which is about social connection and disconnecting from social media and managing that side of it. And then Still Your Mind, which is all about mindfulness, meditation, and sleep. So they're very practical. Then you can learn about those areas, but then you got these experts saying, well, here's what you can actually do, and here's how you can create a daily habit. So it's, again, there is your Bible to use, daily to just, get that extra bit out of your day and make a small improvement and a small step forward.
Well, moving forward, are you just going to continue with the mental health sort of advocacy and the work that you do and do acting, or are you still open to having sort of opportunities, whether that might be modeling or another business or something, or is your focus really on one or two things now?
Definitely on, and like you said at the beginning, I've done a lot of different things, and there's only so much one person can do. And I'm really grateful that in my 20s, I tried so many different things and I've refined and found what I love doing, which is the mental health work and the acting. And for me, it's now about simplifying everything and getting, becoming better at how I can do, the 2 main things that I'm doing: improve as an actor, and through this Move Your Mind organization, just keep improving it. And growing it and helping as many people as we can through it. And, other business opportunities may stem from that in that realm. I'm definitely not looking to expand into other areas or industries right now. I think it's, more than enough to take on with sort of what I'm doing, but, that's the main focus. And I think you sort of have to be, if you want to do anything and make any sort of impact, it's very hard to do it unless you've got unlimited resource behind you. It's very hard to do it if you've got too many different things you're trying to do at once.
I finally just wanted to ask if something has popped up for someone in this podcast, or something that has triggered something from their past, or they're motivated to get help in whatever avenue that might be. What advice would you give to them?
I would say that, there's no there there should not be any stigma with this stuff. Like if you go and get help, it's the same as saying, like, this is the way I see it, and I think everyone should see it this way. If my arm was cut open right now while I'm having this conversation to you and it's bleeding out and I'm feeling dizzy, I'm about to pass out, you know, would any most people in the world logically would go, and I'd stop the interview and I'd go and get help. I'd be calling, I'd be trying to bandage it up, get to a hospital, get it stitched up.
Of
I
course,
wouldn't
yeah.
leave it. And on top of that, I wouldn't feel any form of stigma or embarrassment about telling people or asking for help about what happened. If you have
Mm,
a problem with your mental health, it is not only in the realm of being the same, it is exactly the same. If you're a male or a female, if you're a human and you live on this planet, you're going to suffer from physical problems at some point in your life. And you
mm.
absolutely are going to suffer from mental health related problems. You might not have clinical depression, but every person on this planet is going to have ups and downs and problems, mentally. So there's no shame in it. In fact, if you can speak up about it, it takes a lot more courage and strength to talk about it than not, despite what I've been told. So I'd say embrace it, get help, remind yourself that that's actually the right thing to do. You're going to set an example for other people. You're going to help yourself. You're going to hopefully be able to help other people. And it's what we should all be doing.
Well, hopefully, us talking about it today, obviously reduces that stigma. We're open up to talking about anything, so that's awesome. Nick Bracks, we'll leave it there, but thank you so much for your time. I love the fact that you are so real and humble and able to honestly open up about your past and use it as such a powerful way to help people with their everyday life. So, you do an awesome job, and thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed chatting to you, and I'm sure we'll continue chatting, and really appreciate it.